really appreciate you being here.
Absolutely happy to be here. Hi, everyone.
One thing I wanted to ask is, I mean, so many people are excited to talk to you, especially being the voice of Mercy. We're all voice actors in here. A lot of people have hopes of getting into video games, such a big name like Overwatch. How did it all start?
Well, I started as an actor, and so it started with, doing plays in school, and I grew up in a theater family. But yeah, I always wanted to be an actor, and then I went to study acting, and a little while after I got out of acting school, I guess, I grew up here in New York, and then I moved back to Germany to go to acting school there. I think one of my first voice acting gigs was dubbing Khloe Kardashian into
No way.
German for German TV, which was like, oh mein Gott, Kim, was machst du da? Dein Arsch ist so fett. And then I did like this little cartoon in Germany. Then I moved back to New York, and then I started doing a lot of language learning programs, which was rough. Hours and hours of recording vocabulary words without any intonation, basically, and just sitting in a booth going, run, hide, laugh in German. I did that for a while, and then I started to audition for, commercials. I auditioned for a lot of German VO stuff, and I would book a lot of it. And so I did a few commercials. And then I had done a few other little like animated things. And then I got the audition for Mercy, which
Uh-huh.
I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a big deal. I knew nothing about video games. And yeah, it was very straightforward. I auditioned for it like, in bed under a big blanket. I didn't have a
No
booth
way.
or any professional setup at all. And then I got a call back, and that was at a studio in New York at Sound Lounge in New York. For those of you that know Sound Lounge. And then I booked the gig, and I thought like, oh, cool, I got a gig. Like I got a recording session for a video game. This is cool. And then in the initial recording, Andrea Toyas, who's sort of like the head of casting and directs most of Blizzard's stuff, was like, this is a big deal, right? And I just kind of thought, people always say that. And then it became a very big deal. It became a huge deal. Yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
how it
This
happened.
sounds like a lot of like you just kind of like just like a linear path of just happening for you as you went. Was there any times where you were pursuing it and you had any doubts or anything like that? Or was it all just kind of just happened for you, just one thing after another?
I never pursued voice acting per se. I was
Really?
pursuing acting, and I was doing on-camera stuff. When I left acting school in Germany, I was on a big TV show there, and I did a lot of TV and film in Germany. And then I came back here, and I had some visa issues, so that kind of kept me from being able to audition for a lot of things.
Hmm.
And I always liked doing voice work, but I never pursued it or really thought of honing it, to be honest, until later in my life. And I think until sort of like Mercy came along, and then I really wanted to break into animation, and that took me a while, even having that credit under my name, under my
Really?
belt, and having done other stuff for Blizzard and having done Red Dead Redemption and stuff. It took me a while to book stuff, with like Nickelodeon. And then I did the new Megamind show. That was like a big deal for me when I got onto that show, to be able to, work in animation with such, amazing people also from the comedy world and stuff. It took a while to break into that. But initially I didn't really pursue voice acting. It was like a branch of acting that I like doing, that I always had fun doing, and that because I speak German, I
Hmm.
had sort of that advantage, that was a smaller pool of people competing, obviously, for the jobs that were recording here that
Yeah.
needed German speakers. So, and Mercy also, they were looking for somebody that, could do a German accent and say a few words in German. So that
Oh,
was my
dope.
advantage there.
So how much did like your acting training come into play when you were doing voiceover? Because you're doing like in-person acting. Do you still like approach a role the same way you would like for voiceover as you would for on camera?
I think it's a little bit, it's different because obviously you have different tools, you know. Obviously with voice acting, you have your voice to convey everything and everything has to be in there. You don't have your face or your body isn't visible. I use my body a lot when I'm in the booth, and that's really important for me. I need that. But in terms of approaching a role, I think what's nice about voice acting, especially with the video games, a little less with animation, I find it's very collaborative,
Mm,
especially if you have like one of the bigger, you know, if it's like one of the main sort of or bigger roles or you know, a character that is going to be around for a while. Because video games, although they are obviously storytelling, there's also technical aspects that go into what the character kind of needs to convey at
mm.
any given moment. And so the developers will be, you know, in the recording with you, the writers, it'll be, you know, a different sort of team of people than on set or when you're shooting a film or a TV show where, yeah, you have the writers and the director, but then you've kind of done a lot of that work ahead of time, you know? My experience has been that I've found the characters or what they need to be in a more collaborative way than in other
Okay.
mediums,
How
which
much
is
does
cool.
stand-up comedy help?
Stand up really helps with animation. You know, animation to me at least is mostly, you know, 95% comedy timing, you know, and understanding punchlines, understanding comedy, understanding how to find those moments of like going big and playing with the dynamics of comedy and of surprise and of big characters. Even when they're grounded, you still, you know, you're still playing with that timing a lot. I think stand up helps you like be sharp for sure, you know, around people, and it helps you to be able to kind of, yeah, think on your feet and improvise as well, and kind of play off of what's in the room, you know.
For sure. I did comedy for about 10 years. We actually have a mutual, Dave Maharaj. He was on the show.
Oh, no way. I
Yeah.
love Dave. Oh, Dave is one of my favorite people ever.
Everybody's
Mm.
got like a always has like a wild, usually a wild story about how they got into stand up. What made you take the leap to do it?
Well, I kind of did it the opposite way that most people do it. I started by writing like 1 hour funny solo shows, and then well, I guess that's not true. I started doing character comedy first, and then but then I wrote my first solo show, and it was funny. I didn't really intend for it to be funny, but it was funny. And then I kind of worked backwards. Then I was like, oh, I should probably have 5 minutes set and not just a 1 hour show. So,
Usually the other way that people go.
right, exactly. But so it kind of like, it wasn't this one moment for me where I was like, I'm going to an open mic. It was more like, I've done. I've done the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I like did 30 shows for a month every day, an hour, and now I have to go and do 5 minutes, you know. It kind of came organically. It's not, I don't have a crazy story, but I did just do the club that one of your students books. There was a guy in the front row, and I asked him something and he answered, and he had an Australian accent. I was like, "Oh, you're from Australia?" Like, I asked if anybody was an immigrant. Why didn't you say anything? And he was like, "No, I'm from Long Island." And so I roasted him for like 4 minutes. I was like, "Who talks like that? Who's from Long Island?" And then he was like, "No, I have a speech impediment." And then I was like, my career is over. You're a plant. And he laughed so hard and he was having such a good time. And after the show, he wrote me a message and said, "Thank you so much. This was the best night of my life. I can't wait to tell my friends about this. This was amazing." But that was definitely one of those stand-up stories that I'll never forget. I was like, oh my God, I'm a horrible human being. I just totally, like, that's it. That's the end of my career in stand-up. But no, he was
How
very
is
happy.
like, do you actively try to find a moment that you can add to like an audition that you're doing, like in animation that's like unique that you're like, I think I could add this, like with your writing skills and all that as well?
I try to, yeah. I mean, not too much. Like I'll do it on the second take if I do two takes, or even if it's just a little something, a little emote, a little giggle, a little, a little word at the end or something. I like to play with that, and if I can think of something funny, I like to, imagine that I may make person listening laugh. I was talking to the Megamind thing I did was DreamWorks, and I was talking to the casting director, and she told me that they get like 600 auditions per
Yeah.
character that they put out. And so, like, I just like the idea of not obnoxiously, going on forever, but doing something that may make them smile, or where I'm having fun, and then hopefully they have fun too. So yeah, I like doing that. I also sometimes slate in character. Some casting directors hate that and some like it. I just do it when I feel like it because I think it's fun sometimes, but I'm not telling anybody to do
The
that.
thing, well, the thing about this here, the one that I run here, mainly that they're doing commercials, but everybody's always wanted to get in
Mm,
video games. I myself have not gotten far in video games or animation. I've had a bunch of close calls, so it's always great to
it's
get
tough.
people on like you, yeah, and just to
Yeah, it's
hear
tough.
like the reality of it that there's 600 people going for like one of the bigger roles, like in animation, all that. So you really
Yeah.
got to do something to get attention.
Well, and I think that, I'm sure everybody here, if everybody here pretty much works and knows how it goes, you have to also just always remind yourself that they're looking for something and that's not in your control. And if you're that thing, you're that thing, and there's nothing that you've done wrong, so to speak. Of course, you can always train more, you can always learn more, you can experiment more, you can push yourself more, but it's not like, I fucked this up. If it's you, it's you. They
Yeah.
say that, but it's true, and I say that also because I have to tell myself that, as well. But it's tough, and I don't know if people here live in New York or LA or where people are based, but I think it's especially tough getting into that world, the video game and animation world, if you're not out in LA.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard her. I'm in New York right now, and it's been
Yeah.
pretty tough. I used to be in Vancouver. I'm from Canada as
Mm,
well, and
right.
yeah, it's a tough gig for sure. When you're doing a role, like, do you always try to infuse your own personality into it, or do you go from a point of view like try to mix it with like what they might be looking for? Do you just go with your gut, or do you try to actively infuse your personality into it, or?
Yeah, no, at this point I just go with my gut, and I go with what I try not to overthink it, or I go with what comes to me. I think that whether you like it or not, you're always infusing your personality.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think the more you can let that happen, the better it is, because
Hmm.
your personality is the thing that's unique about you, and that no one else is going to sound like you if you are able to sound like you and not trying to sound like someone or something else. But then, of course, yeah, you just have to get used to that sound may not be what they're looking for, you know. But yeah, I try to, and I try to not overthink the auditions too much and just go with what feels right. And yeah, I think with commercials, it's the same, right? Like sometimes you get an audition and you're like, oh, I know exactly what I want to do for this or what
Uh-huh.
this is. And then others, you're like, oh, I don't know. I guess I'll try this, or you do it 15 times and still don't like how it sounds or whatever. Yeah.
For sure. I think for me, like most of the time when I'm doing it, like at least for commercials anyway, I can't mind read what they're wanting. Like I've got to like look at the copy and have an idea of like what the tone is and then just unapologetically be me. That's what's gotten me ahead most of the time.
Sometimes they don't know what they're looking for. They think they know, then they hear something else and they like that. I got an audition where I was the voice reference, and then I didn't book it. I was like, what is this? I wrote my agent. I was like, you realize that I'm the voice reference. They were like, voice reference Mercy from Overwatch. I was like, I'm the voice reference. Can they not just give me the job? I
Yeah,
mean,
no
like,
shit.
why do I have to read for this? And she was like, no, no, of course. And they know, and I'm putting it in the notes, and then I didn't book it.
But
But
you were
you
the
were
reference. Was that like a wow, I made it kind of moment?
No, it was annoying. I was like, why do I have to audition for this thing if you want this voice? Then
Yeah.
then just give me the job.
What's it like having the fans that you have now from Mercy? Like, do you go to Comic-Con? Do you do that whole thing and all that?
Yes, it is pretty wild. I mean, now the game is, it's been out for 8 years. And so the kind of peak of the madness is, kind of behind us. I mean, I still do Comic Cons and it's still crazy, but when it first came out, it was really insane. Yeah, there was people like following us on the street and we kind of felt like we were the Beatles. It was crazy. People would flip out and but amazing. It was beautiful. So, and it's been so incredible to learn about the gaming community, to learn how, how important these characters and these worlds, these stories are to people, how they give people, people meet their partners, best
Yeah.
friends. It's a lot of people that, not all of them, but a lot of them are people that like in the rest of their lives are maybe not the most that people that are like, socially awkward, people that have social anxiety, people that are kind of outsiders. And so it's been really, really amazing to see the impact that something like that has on a community of people that is kind of considered like a niche, but it's not because it's, bigger than the industry is bigger than Hollywood
Yeah,
and
it's huge.
more people play video games and watch movies, but it's kind of considered this, subculture in
Yeah.
a weird way and kind of looked down upon by a lot of people. Now that's changing, I think, with like The Last of Us on HBO and all of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been amazing. I got to travel the world. I've done nearly 100 Comic Cons all over the world, Australia, Abu Dhabi, Hawaii,
Oh
all
my
over the
God.
UK, Costa Rica. Yeah, super amazing. A huge, huge privilege and hugely inspiring and yeah, humbling.
Have you played it? Have you played it?
I tried. I've tried. It's really hard. It's really, really
It
hard.
is. Yeah.
It's really, really not easy and stressful. It's a first-person shooter game, so you have people like yelling in your ear, and yeah, I am not. I think no, it's not for me. I don't
Did
know.
you stream
I'm
it?
too old. I never streamed it, but during the pandemic, I was on Twitch and did like a comedy show on Twitch, and then had video game fans like join and play like improv games with other voice actors. And so that was really, really fun. And that was a really, really fun community
Mm.
that came out of that.
I want to
Yeah.
ask you because I'm really curious about it. Your one person show, Hi Hitler.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How did this come about?
That came about because I was born in Germany and I'm a German Jew. My mother's side of the family is Jewish. My dad is German. I was 8 when we moved to New York. And when I was a kid, I would hear, I mean, obviously Hitler like
Mm.
was discussed in school. And, I always thought that it was a greeting like hi Hitler, like hello, how are you, not Heil. And I was kind of obsessed with Hitler as a kid. I thought he was really funny looking and I wanted to be Hitler for Halloween, and my mom was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And so this became kind of like a joke in my family. And then I wrote this one person show about it was kind of just like a fish out of water story about
Mm.
moving from Germany to here and then moving back to Germany and just always kind of like not fitting in and not knowing where I belong and all of that. So yeah, it was called Hi Hitler.
Amazing. You working on other shows? Are you still writing? Like,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I have a new show that I'm working on. I've taken 4 other shows to Edinburgh and to different festivals and New York Comedy Festival and stuff. And I'm working on a new one now. Yeah.
how often do you try to do Edinburgh? Because I know some people try to write a new show every year. I did the Melbourne International Comedy Festival 2 years in a row, and
Oh,
then
you
I
did?
just
That's
quit
great.
comedy after that. I was like,
Oh, wow.
too much. I was like,
I did Edinburgh 3 years in a row, and then I took a break, and then I did it. The last time I did it was in 2019. I thought about going back this year. I don't think I will. It's just so expensive now, and I think I've gotten everything I wanted out of it. I mean, the UK comics do it every year because it's just what you have to do if you're a UK comic, and the Australian comics as well. But I think I'm gonna hold off for a while. So, on the question how often, I would, if somebody just knocked on my door and was like, here's $20,000
Uh-huh.
for Edinburgh, I would do it if somebody else paid for it, but I don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it's a hard month. It's tough. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, it's in Scotland. It's in August. They don't have summer. It's like rainy and cold. And you basically do your show every day for 30 days straight. And you have to hustle to get people in and get press, and it's exhausting. And you're going to see other people's shows, and you're constantly running around, and it's a lot. It's like the performer Olympics, basically, is what I call it.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but it's a lot for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's intense. It'll change your life though. Like how
Yeah.
much experience do you get in that time? You're doing an hour a day for a
Yeah.
month. That's
It
intense.
definitely changed my life. Yeah. It completely changed my life. Everything changed after the first time I did Edinburgh. It really gave me my power back in the sense of like, it was kind of this moment where I realized I don't have to ask anybody for permission. I don't have to wait for anybody to give me a job or to say that I'm good or to like me or, want me anywhere. I can just make my own stuff. And yeah, and then that was kind of like on like a personal side. And then I started working with a really great manager and I got really big agents out of it and I got a tour and then I got this part on this like really cool British TV show called Red Dwarf out of it, and the UK agent then got me a small part in Fantastic Beasts, and everything kind of just yeah changed, and I sort of gained a whole new perspective on life. But I was also lucky because my show did well, and I so that helped obviously, have a
Mm.
good experience and yeah, everything before Edinburgh, I waited tables for almost 7 years. I had these like visa issues when I moved back here. And I sort of felt like I was like banging my head against a brick wall, like going on
Mhm.
Actors Access and trying to find auditions and waiting tables and translating and doing all like 100 million jobs and just feeling like, oh my God, I'm always going to be a waitress. I'm never going to get out of this job. Not to no shade for
Yeah.
servers, but I just like felt like I'm never going to get out of this. And then I weirdly booked this horrible horror movie and decided to do Edinburgh both sort of at the same time. And then yeah, I haven't had to do anything else since then. It's been like almost 12 years now, 11 years.
When did the thought that you would have to like go back to work like fade away? You know what I mean? Like when you first go full time in the arts and all that, there's always that sneaking fear, oh my God, I might have to go back.
No, I think that like abyss is always there. And I'm always like, oh my God, am I gonna have to go back? No, I think just one thing, led to another. And I just kept running with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how it feels more like I kept running with it. I'm still running with it. Yeah, that sort of a thing. But I think that's also that moment of like the perspective change where you're like, oh, I can make my own stuff, and I can find ways to make money with making my own stuff, and I can try to sell a show. I can, yeah.
You got to tell me about this horror film with Stephen Baldwin. What was
Where did you find that? Where
it
is
was
that,
in
by the
it's a
way?
bio that Cal sent me and I
Oh,
had to
really?
say it
That's
because it was so
hilarious.
funny. You're like that you do not regret. I'm like, okay, something happened.
No, it was just this really terrible horror film. I was the lead. It was all shot in Turkey. I was in Turkey for 6 weeks with Michael Madsen and Stephen Baldwin, and
Oh
it
my
was
God.
just insane. It was wild and insane and strange. And this producer wrote me an email out of the blue and was like, this German director gave me your contact info. We're looking for the lead for this movie, and it shoots in Istanbul for 4 weeks and then in this little town for another 2 weeks. And it's, yeah, you would be the lead. What do you think? And I was like, am I being sex trafficked right now? I was like, what is happening? Oh my God. And then I was like, okay. Then I had a Zoom meeting with this guy, and I still was like, this is so weird. He's like, okay, if you want to do it, we'd be happy to have you. I was like, what? And then I kind of didn't believe that it was happening until I was in Istanbul. And I was like, okay, it's happening. And it was wild. Yeah, it was a wild weeks. And that movie is a really bad. It's called Magi,
Magi?
Magi or Magi,
Magi?
Magi.
M-A.
Yeah, please don't go
Everybody
look
watch
for
it.
it. No, nobody watch it because you will feel ashamed that you met me.
What was Stephen Baldwin and Michael Madsen like?
Michael Madsen was really cool, but very drunk all the time, but very,
Really?
very nice. And he's a cool, sad man. And Stephen Baldwin was a ridiculous person. He
In
was
what
nice to
way?
me. He was just like he was nice. He was very nice to me.
Exactly how you think he'd be.
But yes, he's exactly how you think he'd be. Yeah, exactly. No, no.
Contradicting that, or just like comparing being on that set, first lead experience, that must have been amazing on its own. But when you go onto a huge, massive movie like Fantastic Beasts, what was that like? Was it were you like, holy crap, like what am I walking onto? What were the sets like?
Yeah, that's a great question because the set was insane. I was intimidated, definitely intimidated. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I'm just in one scene and it's this like big bank scene that goes on for a while with Dan Fogler and Eddie Redmayne. And Eddie Redmayne sort of like comes in, and then I don't really know a lot about Harry Potter, but there's like these like weird creature things that like run around, and then Dan Fogler comes and like tries to speak to the bank manager, and that's when I come in. But yeah, we shot in the studio outside of London, which is like the Warner Brothers studio there, basically. I just remember the costume designer, Colleen Atwood, who actually won an Oscar for the costumes for that movie. And I just like, I have such a distinct memory of her because she was so incredible. And there were so many extras and so many people on set and like so many moving parts and such a gigantic set. And she looked like the Terminator. Like she had like everything on her like radar and she knew
Wow.
exactly what everybody needed. And everybody was just like totally at the top of their game. And usually, when people are at the top of their game, they're nice or at least like not assholes. Like usually they're like focused on their thing and not focused on being an asshole or a diva or anything like that. So everybody was great. And yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing experience for sure. It was intimidating though. Yeah,
I
definitely.
bet. What
It's
was did you get to talk to Eddie Redmayne?
Yeah, everybody was nice. I mean, actors are always like nice on set, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Or at least I've met a lot of celebrity actors and nobody's ever been an asshole. Maybe I haven't, come across the divas. But yeah, no, everybody was super nice. Eddie Redmayne was nice. Everybody was great on set. Colin Farrell was there one day. He was super nice too. Everybody was very very nice. I remember when I did the costume fitting for that movie, I was doing my second Edinburgh show, so the year after High Hitler, and I was flyering for the show. I had already booked the part and I knew I was going to shoot right after the festival in London. And I was standing outside, it was raining, of course, flyering for my show, being like, "Hey, want to come see comedy from New York, you know?" And my phone rang and it was like the second AD or something and he was like, we need you to come to London for a costume fitting. And I told him that I'm in Edinburgh and I'm doing the festival and I have my show every day. And he was like, "What time is your show?" And that show I think was at 4:30 every day or 5, maybe 5. And so he said, "All right, then we're gonna have to fly you out after the show one day, do the fitting in the morning and fly you back in time for the show." And I was like, okay. So they did. They booked me a flight and flew me, to this like incredibly beautiful hotel out by the studio, which is like this like estate with these like rolling hills, and it just looks like amazing.
Oh my
And I
God.
was doing the festival, and the festival is like grimy, you're
Yeah.
like grinding, you're like flyering every day and doing
Yeah.
shows, and you're going out and you're just running around, and you're like, yeah, it's like you're like in the trenches. So I got to this amazing hotel, so beautiful, so fancy. I totally ordered room service and like was like, ah. And then the next morning they picked me up and I went to the costume fitting, Colleen Atwood and all these like it was all original 1920s pieces. And I tried on like a bunch of stuff, and that was so fun. And then they were like, we need you to go just see hair and makeup, so they can check if whatever they need to do. So I went to hair and makeup, and then I had to go back because my show was at 5, and I had to fly back from London and stuff to Edinburgh. And so I leave the trailer. Colin Farrell's standing outside of one of the makeup trailers smoking. He's like, hey. I go into the car. They drive me to the airport. I fly back to Edinburgh. I take a taxi. I go back to the venue. It's like 4:30. I get changed. I do my show. And then after the show, I went to the like performer hangout bar. And I remember I walked in and I was like, oh my God. And then I realized nobody knows what just happened to me. And
Yeah.
like, and I think it was like, I wasn't allowed to say either. And it was so
Oh,
weird because I was like, you guys don't understand. I just had these like 24 hours in Hollywood glam land. So that was fun. But yeah, being on set was super intimidating.
I bet, but how much did you like? I mean, all that time you spent doing comedy in front of people and at the Edinburgh Fringe, like that must have helped. Like being on set and just knowing that you could get in front of people, that you got like, if you forgot something, you'd always be there. No, do you think that helped with your confidence?
I mean, I had done a lot of film and TV already, but I think it's really hard actually and I think this goes for comedy too. I have a much harder time, and a lot of comedians will tell you that like doing a 5-minute set, dropping in and like being
Mm.
amazing in 5 minutes is much harder. And so this was a small part. I had like 2 lines, and it's hard to really like kill it, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
drop in and just like be so cool and chill that, and also when you're playing a small part like that, you're kind of like a cog, you know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
like you have a specific function and you have to kind of respect that as well. Like you have a specific function in the story and your storytelling device. And if they didn't need you there, you probably wouldn't be there. So you have to kind of also fulfill that thing that the story asks of you. And it's probably not that you stand out and are this like, depending on what it is. If it's like, of course, if it's this cameo where, you're kind of the punchline and you dominate the scene, that's different. But that wasn't the case for me. It so it wasn't that easy to like relax into it,
Mm.
because it's also such a huge production, and they're going, on a very very tight schedule. So you have to kind of just come and do your thing and not expect too much from that moment in terms of like, yeah, like this, I really like
Yeah.
nailed these 2 lines. You know what I mean? In that sense, yeah, the fact that I've performed a lot and I've done film and TV made me aware that it wasn't my moment in that sense.
Mm.
When I did Red Dwarf, which is a 4-camera show, and parts of it are shot in front of a live studio audience,
Oh wow.
the stand up and live performance really helped me because there, you get to rehearse once in front of the audience, then you see where the laughs are. The laughs, it's pretty much a rule that the laughs aren't gonna, they're gonna come on the punchlines that you expect them to come on, and they're also gonna come in other unexpected moments. So you do it, and then suddenly you're like, oh, okay, that's what they're laughing at. All right. And then you get to do it again. And that was an experience where the stand up and live performance really kicked in and really made
Yeah.
me be able to shine. I also had like the guest lead on that episode and stuff, but yeah, for film when you're doing like small parts and it's such a big production, you don't have a ton of room,
Uh,
most of
so
the
when you said
time.
you were doing four camera, was that like four camera switch? Like they're moving around on the things while you're going? Like,
It's like the traditional, no, it's like the traditional sitcom
okay.
live studio audience setup.
How
Yeah.
long were those shots like where you were going? Was it almost like doing theater in a way? Like instead of like
Yeah.
TV where it's just like, half a page or whatever.
Yeah, you perform pretty much the scene. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
that was really fun.
I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to know, like, for new people, because a lot of people that are in this are like super new. What would you think would be like the optimal way to go at this? Like, do you think like in terms of voiceover, just like go at it hard? Do you think they need to get a demo? Like, what would be a trajectory if you could do it all over again? Everything you've done, just like get into an acting class. Do you think that's helped the most?
Yeah, I mean, I always get asked this question. I always kind of have like the same answer, which definitely is take acting classes. Yes, absolutely. The more you can get to know the tools you have and the more you can kind of experiment with what you can do, the better I think it is. And being in those spaces where you can experiment and see other people, watch other people, a lot of times it's like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, I'm
Yeah,
sure you know what I'm talking about.
totally.
And I love, I mean, I still like taking workshops. I still like taking classes. I love watching other people work or, being able to sit in on a session. That's great if you can do that. So that's what classes are great for, yeah, learning some skills, just classes that have to do with breathing techniques or singing or just how to use your voice. But then I always tell everybody the same thing, which is that, yeah, there's no one way. If you have the setup or the money to get a demo made, do it for sure. If you
Yeah.
don't have that, don't let that stop you either. Like my first gig that I got here doing the language learning programs, I found it on Craigslist. You know what I mean?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I just typed in like voiceover, and then I typed in like German, and I would just like, I think the you just have to hustle, and I think hustling just means that you just, don't let any like turn over everything and look everywhere you can to see where an opportunity might lie or you can learn something or I don't think that you need to be a person that when you meet somebody you have to see an opportunity in every person you meet.
No.
But if you're interested in it, yeah, I also tell people in terms of like animation stuff, I think I love watching cartoons or animated shows with my eyes closed. So you just kind of focus on
Oh,
the
yeah.
voice, hear the voice. For video games, you have to if you're listening back to video games or if you play video games, then you know that there's different sort of scenarios where you have to have where your voice has to carry over either a lot of sound or depending on what kind of a game it is, you are either encouraging the player or it's a story that you're telling in a more cinematic way. Just know the different types um of of mediums and genres that are out there
Mm.
and record yourself, listen back to it, stuff like that. And then I think, yeah, I always say don't focus too much on doing voices. This is kind of what we started with, try to find your voice. But yeah, there's no, I mean, I have met and you know, I'm friends with a lot of the big like legends of voice acting, and they all have different paths. Like Billy
Yeah.
West started in radio, and then like, Troy Baker started as an actor, like very sort of like classic acting. And then Jennifer Hale started doing video games, but was a singer too. Then I don't know, Nolan North was on soap operas. You know what I mean? There's so many different paths that you can take.
But you would recommend once they get started and all that, and if they want to take it serious to the next level, that LA might be the most advantageous to go after it?
I mean, I don't live in LA. I live in New York. And I think if you really want to do animation, there's not a lot that records out of New York,
There's not.
you know, or maybe nothing really. Video games, there are some that record out of New York. But if you really, really want to get into animation, I think you do have to get to LA. But then you could be like, what about Eric Bauza, who's like the voice of Bugs Bunny? He's a fellow Canadian. He just moved to LA recently. He lived in Toronto for a long time. But I think that, yes, I think if you really, really want to get into animation, then going out to LA is probably good, because if you can meet the people, you know, at Nickelodeon or, you know, those places that just kind of like have a group of people that they call in over and over and over again, that's beneficial, probably. And for agents, they probably will like it if you're out there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking
Of
time out of
course.
your busy schedule to talk to us. I really appreciate it. Where can everybody find you if they want to find you on social media, your podcast, all that?
Podcast is on a hiatus,
Okay.
but you can find it anywhere you find podcasts. It's called Immigrant Jam Podcast. And you can find me on Instagram at You Love Lucie. That's the letter U, LOVELUCIE. And yeah, and then just in New York
Do you have more
or on the
Poughkeepsie shows
road.
coming up? There are some New York people in the
Not
audience.
for now, but I have a monthly show that I do in New York the first Friday of the month. I am also at clubs all over the city, on shows all over the city. If you follow me on Instagram, I always post where I'll be. So
Okay. Well,
thank you so
everybody,
much.
come on back. Oh, turn on your cameras. Everybody thank Lucie for being here, taking time out of her schedule. Cal, thanks for hooking this up.
Hey, this was awesome. Thank you so much. Lucie, next time we'll have a limo for you, I promise.
You better have the limo waiting.
The Dice
The
Man.
stretch
That's it.
limo.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lucie.
Thanks, guys. Good
everybody.
luck, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.